You're listening to a Mamma Mia podcast.
Mamma Mia acknowledges the traditional owners of land and waters that this podcast is recorded on.
Mamma Mia Out Loud!
Hello and welcome to Mamma Mia Out Loud. It's what women are actually talking about on Friday, the 1st of December. I'm Holly Wainwright.
I'm Mia Freedman.
And I'm Jessie Stevens.
And on the show today, those who shall not be named, or shall they? Why everyone is talking about two allegedly racist royals today. And the names of 60 women were read out in Parliament this week. They are those who've been killed by men in their lives this year. What do we do about this never-ending toll? And we wrap up our best and worst of the week, which includes an office flashing incident, tracking your teen, and Trinny and Mia's uncomfortable conversation. But first, Mia.
In case you missed it, from the woman who brought us the iconic term conscious uncoupling and introduced us to the idea of vagina candles, there's a new term and a new idea we have to get our heads around, and it's freebirding. Gwyneth Paltrow is trying to make freebirding happen. And when I first read that headline, I thought that she was trying to make women wearing no underpants happen. Because I was thinking was I thinking of free balling? Is that what men,
You
is
were.
that
Yeah,
free dogging?
You know
Do you
what?
call it free dogging?
There's not a proper word for women airing out their vaginas, and we ought to make one.
There isn't. And that's why I thought she knows the sort of controversy that vagina things cause. I quite liked the idea of freebirding.
Maybe
Free-vagging.
free vagging, yeah, because that's what our parents, our grandparents always said.
Anyway, that's not what it is.
You've got to air it out.
My mum always said that. I actually agree.
That's not what Gwyneth was talking about, friends.
No.
Let's
Close,
get back
close.
to Gwyneth's wisdom,
So-
please.
She said that when her son Moses, who is currently a senior in high school, goes off to college next year, where her elder daughter Apple already is, she and her husband Brad Falchuk won't be empty nesters. No, they're going to be free birds. And she says, I'm trying to reframe it so that I can at least try to convince myself there's some kind of silver lining, she said. Empty nest sounds so sad and lonely. I actually love this, have to say.
I think
I
it's
love it too.
really nice. It's like how we've gone from childless to child-free. It completely changes how you look at the term, and we've seen women of this age as like an object of pity, but I think a lot of people get quite excited about this stage.
Generation X women are refusing to be the objects of pity. This is our thing. We're like, we might be getting older, but don't you be telling us we're menopausal. We're peri.
Yeah.
That's so true. Empty nesters.
We've got an empty nest. We are free birds. It's like we will not have this negativity in our lives. And Gwyneth is the standard bearer. Keep calm and carry on. That is a very British motto, largely attributed to the royal family. And as we are talking right now, Princess Catherine of Wales, also known as Kate Middleton, even though she hasn't been called that for 12 years or so, is doing exactly that. She is wearing a fancy dark green frock with dramatic sleeves to a fancy event as news outlets around the world are losing their noodle over the fact that she and her father-in-law, the king, have been smeared as being the infamous royal racists in a new book by one of Prince Harry's favourite journalists. For a little context here, remember when Meghan and Harry were on Oprah? I think we all remember that, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And Meghan said,
concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
What? About how dark your baby is going to be?
Potentially, and what that would mean or look like.
Ooh.
Now, at the time, Oprah said to Meghan, will you tell me who said that? And she said no. And then when Harry wrote his book, he wouldn't tell you who said that either. And then when Harry and Meghan did their 6 hours of inspiring Netflix documentary TV, they also refused to name who those people were. But now those names are out. There's a new book. It's been written by Omid Scobie. He is a journalist who wrote a book about Harry and Meghan that was largely corroborated that Harry and Meghan wrote with them, Finding Freedom. So he's a mate. He's on the inside. His new book is called Endgame, and it's being published all over the world, and it's about the end of the royal family. Now, a leaked version in Holland has allegedly got the names of Kate and the King in there as the people who've been named. Now, we weren't going to name them. That's what we're going to discuss here, is whether or not that's okay. But Piers Morgan, that paragon of journalistic integrity, cough, cough, was not afraid to go there overnight. This is what he said.
I don't believe any racist comments were ever made by any of the royal family. And until there is actual evidence of those comments being made, I will never believe it. The royals who are named in this book are King Charles and Catherine, Princess of Wales.
Now, we might think that that's a bit disingenuous of Piers. He's outraged. He's, as we know, very famously does not like Harry and Meghan. He's outraged at the very idea that these two senior royals might be racist. But also, while we're at it, I'm going to tell you who they are. Friends, should we know who these two royals are? Jessie Stevens.
I mean, Piers Morgan gave the media license to name them now, which is a bit funny.
Because we don't know that it's them. It's uncorroborated, unverified,
it's also
unverifiable.
Undenied, though, isn't it? It is very interesting that at this point, you know, you're hearing all these whispers within the palace and from different sources, and they're like, how did they get the letter? And I'm like, guys, deny it. Like, why are we talking about the actual source? We had a big argument this morning about whether or not we would say the names, and I was team say it. And the reason why is because...
I was team against it because I'm a better person than you.
No, I thought about it because I went...
On this particular occasion.
Yeah, I was like, I don't think Mia is a better person than me, so let's just unpick this. And I just thought, what an arbitrary place to stop. Like, Prince Harry, I'm a defender of Prince Harry, but that book... I mean, if you want to talk about making people look bad, he made a bunch of people look bad. And then they had the documentary. And then in Harry's defense, William and Kate, I'm not going to call them Catherine of Duchess crap. Anyway, William and Kate, they've been leaking for how long? Decades and decades. We've been playing this game forever. This is just another leak. I reckon it's orchestrated in some way. This stunt thing of accidentally leaking names. All three of us have written books.
Oh, yeah.
Come on. Every single word is poured over and editors. And then when there's an international one, you then have to edit it again. The fact that this would accidentally get out, this is very reminiscent of, remember Spare was accidentally released early in Spain? What's going on? Like, this is a publicity stunt. Suddenly I know the name of this book. The way that media works now with globalization and social media, the names are out. It makes no difference whether we say them or not.
To be honest, we weren't going to say them, but then in the time even between the meeting we had and now, more and more more media outlets were naming them. So this morning, again, another very esteemed publication, the Daily Mail, were not, but now they are. Now they're saying we were forced to because everybody else is. Mia, thoughts?
I was forced to. No. I clicked on that Piers Morgan thing because a lot of media for the last few days danced around it and said the royals named, but then they didn't say who the names were. So
why were you defensive?
Because I hadn't thought about it in the context of what you just said, Jessie, in terms of Harry's already said all these things. He said that William physically assaulted him. They've said, you know,
Kate and the dress.
And the dress.
Yeah.
However, accusing someone of racism, and that's what they were doing by recounting this anecdote, I think that's a different thing.
It's very, very incendiary.
Oh, poor
But what they did do is tar the whole family,
That's right. And they came out soon after that. They said, we're not going to say who it is, but it wasn't the Queen or Prince Philip, because everyone thought that it was Prince Philip. And so it's like, okay, well then it could only have been all these other people. Was it Camilla? Was it Prince Andrew? Was it Princess Anne? We can't even say now we know, because all we know is Omid Scobie said he wrote no names in a manuscript, so he said it couldn't have been mistranslated in the Dutch edition.
He clearly did.
So that's clearly untrue. So all we know is a journalist who did or didn't work with Harry and Meghan wrote something in a book that was translated that he denies that it's really messy.
It's very messy. And also it's worth noting that Harry has distanced himself from Scobie a little bit. So Scobie was very much in the tent, but since he's been doing a lot more talking lately and obviously promoting this book, I think Harry and Meghan have distanced themselves. And as you said, Mia, what's interesting is that Harry tried to walk this back, and when he was asked directly in his interviews around Spare, were the royal family racist, he said, no, I've been in that family and they weren't. And the journalist said to him, but didn't you say that they said a racist thing about your unborn baby? And he said, we never said it was racist. It was the media that said it was racist. And you're like, oh my God. So it's unquestionably a big mess. One of the things that I think about this is that Kate is buckling up for a very rough few weeks, right? We talked last week about The Crown and how the last season is playing out. They dropped the first 4. It was all about Princess Diana. They're going to drop the second 4 in mid-December. I think it's the 16th. And it's all about Kate and William. And we can guess, I think, what's going to be in there in terms of like the narrative about Kate being the gold digger, prince hunting, all of those kind of things. She is going to have that spotlight swing to her in a very, very full-on way. This has stoked that further. Now, do we deserve to know which members of the royal family said what to who? Don't know that we deserve to know.
But we will.
Your point is right, Jessie, about where do you stop? When everybody's public mudslinging like this, at what point do you just go, no more?
Nobody will ever stop being interested in this story. And the reason that this had to be in the book is it's all that's left. Like, Harry and Meghan have juiced their experience and their grievance and their stories. And I'm not denying that they had a bad time, but they've juiced that, and so many people have made, mostly them, have made so much money off that. No one cares about the dress story anymore and why Kate cried. Like, we feel like we kind of heard about that and it was so boring. This is literally the only thing left. And because they're now not allowed within a mile of the royal family, for good reason, because the royal family don't trust them to not turn every conversation into their next Netflix documentary, they don't have any fresh material. This is the only thing left.
If they have distanced themselves from Omid Scobie and have said that they don't want to name those people, and they've been very, very clear about that, I actually feel a bit sorry for Harry and Meghan here.
But Harry and Meghan, Jessie, love to come out and send out a statement. They could be doing that too today. You know how you were saying, where's the denial?
Yeah.
Where's Harry and Meg's denial?
I think they're going to have to say something. They've been very vocal about privacy. And if they have shared something with him in the past, but they've decided that they don't want it on the record, then that's a real betrayal.
They've been vocal about privacy, and yet Meghan disclosed a private conversation that we don't know the context of, that may or may not have happened.
I don't know.
With someone who she won't name.
And it wasn't even her conversation, Mia. Remember, it was Harry's. Harry told Meghan about it. Meghan told Oprah about it. It's like...
And now Harry's saying, I never said that. It was the media.
Yeah, but it is pretty incriminating. I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that someone in the royal family said something pretty bloody racist.
And also that Meghan was the subject of an enormous amount of racism from the British press.
Yes. Unquestionably.
What do we think Kate should do? To be honest, all the interest is going to be on her, not Charles, about this, right? Yeah. So no one is particularly surprised that Charles is named in this story. People are probably a little bit more surprised that it's Kate. We know that Harry has said quite a lot of things about Kate in the book. Should they comment? Should they become more Harry and Meghan and start commenting on this stuff?
If I was Kate and I felt I didn't say it, this would be my line, because what I am watching in real time is the world turn on Kate Middleton, which hadn't happened yet. Like, people think about like the Queen's funeral and all of that.
She's never been cancelled.
She's never properly been cancelled. And this, I'm seeing a lot of people get very angry. But there is something in the reporting, and maybe I'm reading it wrong, that suggests to me that there is some sort of document, right? There's a letter. There's a letter maybe between Meghan and Charles that may or may not confirm that this was said. So I'm wondering.
There is.
Yeah.
Again, this is all alleged.
This is all alleged.
But Meghan wrote to Charles and said, here are my concerns.
So
she left a paper trail.
Yeah. So if Kate were to come out and say, that never happened, I don't know what they're talking about, Meghan has something in her pocket, which again wouldn't necessarily prove it.
Do you know what
but
Meghan doesn't have, and no one will ever know, is context. So where she's in an impossible position, and it's interesting because you said keep calm and carry on. The other royal mantra is never complain, never explain. And that's the approach that the royal family has taken to Harry's book and all of the accusations that have been made, which is extraordinary when you think about it, because once they start addressing one, they then have to address every single allegation that's ever made. So the problem,
and
though,
then it'll
for
become
Kate,
ping pong. It'll become a back and forth,
The other problem is that, as we've learned from Meghan, when you're a part of the royal family, you've got so many constraints. You can't just get on Instagram. You can't just release a statement to the media. There's so much politics and so many layers. And so our minds automatically go to the worst version of this accusation and what did Kate say or what did Charles say. But we don't have the context. Like, Charles could have said something and Kate could have gone, oh, goodness, I wonder. I don't know. Or maybe she just went, yeah, which is not ideal, but it's different to saying a terrible version of this, which is what, of course, we imagine. So she's in an impossible position.
Lindy, Kimmy, Lucina, Dana Isaac, Maria Williams, Wendy Sleeman, Rebecca Kluwer, a 37-year-old...
That's politician Susan Lee reading in Parliament the names of some of the 60 women who have been killed in Australia so far this year. In just 1 week, 4 women were allegedly murdered by a man known to them in a single Australian state of South Australia. Some stories over the last few weeks have included a 67-year-old woman named Catherine Safranco, who was reportedly killed by her son. A 90-year-old woman died in hospital this week, days after a man in his 30s allegedly broke into the elderly woman's room at an aged care facility and sexually assaulted her. Then there's Katusha Machado, a woman in her 40s who had only been in Australia a few months. She moved here from Brazil to reportedly work with children with disabilities. She was also allegedly murdered by a man known to her. And so it goes on. We cover this on Mamamia all year long. And perhaps the most depressing reality is that 2023 looks like the deadliest year yet for women at the hands of men. Conversations, awareness, education, reporting. And with all of that, it's getting worse, not better. Holly, this is being discussed in Parliament, as we heard, and Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said this week that he has been touched by domestic violence.
I'm passionate about the issue of family and domestic violence and doing something about it because I know the impact that it has. I've been there.
There's anger all over the country saying we have to do more, but what does do more actually look like?
I am heartened that Albanese is talking about this. But for me, when we say do more, I want more and more and more men to speak about this because we speak about this all the time. We write about this on Mamamia all the time. I know domestic violence advocates all over the country who work tirelessly in all kinds of forums, keeping this in the spotlight, keeping these women's names in the spotlight. I want to hear men talking about this now all the time. I want every prominent man in Australia to be talking about it on their podcasts. I want them to be talking about it on their socials, on their panels and their talk shows. I want Albanese to be reading out the names of those women every time it happens because I just think that we are treating this like a women's issue and it's not our issue. It's their fucking issue. And I know I sound really angry, but I am really angry. And I know there's a lot more than conversation that needs to happen, and I know we're going to talk about that, Jessie. But what is overwhelmingly true is that men do have a power to influence each other on this in a way that other things do not influence them. And the fact it's getting worse rather than better, the fact that there are going to be more women killed this year, and the thing to always remember is it's not even the important number. The women killed is not the important number, as terrible as that sounds. Somebody calls the police about domestic violence in Australia every 2 minutes. Every 2 minutes. This is hundreds and thousands of times. You know, it is absolutely a tsunami.
And they're just the ones that call the police. Imagine how bad it has to get before you call the police. I think the reason I've been thinking about this so much at the moment, like so many people have, men don't talk about it because they don't think it's their problem. The men who are not assaulting women and killing women don't think that the men who are have anything to do with them. They feel so far removed from it because let's remember that the majority of men are good men and are not killing and raping women. They're not. But all of those men think that the ones that are
live on another planet.
Yeah.
I disagree with that. I disagree with it because I think that we're living in a false reality if we think that men are divided into two groups, good ones and bad ones. It's not true. It's not how it works. You know, the names that are read out here and the perpetrators that we talked about just recently when we were talking about the terrible murder of Lily James in Sydney. If you look at these perpetrators, they go across all social classes. They go across all age ranges. They go across lots of different backgrounds. And yes, it's true that you are more likely to be a victim of domestic violence if you're Indigenous. That is absolutely true. But it is not a problem that is siloed. And
I wasn't saying that it was. Hang on a second. I wasn't saying that it was siloed at all.
I know you're not. I'm not arguing with you specifically, Mia. I'm really not. What I'm arguing with is the idea that there's like, men don't think it's about them, because I don't think that's true. I think that for every man who laughs at the joke in the pub, who knows, oh, he's got a bit of a temper, who knows that they themselves wrestle with tempers and issues, like this is something that is so widespread. I think that men have to start talking about it and they have to own it as their issue. Good men, bad men, all the men.
I'm struggling with this because we've been having this conversation for years and years. Rosie Batty was Australian of the Year in 2015. We are in 2023 and things have gotten worse. Like, that's just super depressing. And I hear about conversations and grassroots education, both of which I think are important, but they feel like, and this is probably the wrong thing to say, they feel like a soft approach to a really urgent issue. I'm struggling to draw the line. And this is what, when I was at university, this was the model we learned, that, you know, it's the joke at the pub and it's sexism is drawing a direct line to domestic violence. I'm feeling like it's a lot more complicated than that. If that were the case, why isn't it getting better? Because I'm hearing people talk about it in the media, and I do think that men are getting better and better at calling it out. I do think that there are some men that if they felt there was someone in their group or they saw it on the street, they would stop it. I just don't know if it's as simple as conversations.
What are men meant to do? Like, genuinely, the men who aren't doing the killing, what should they do?
They should be talking about this all the time to pull it out of the darkness. I don't suggest for a minute, Jessie, that this is the only thing that should happen. Yeah. I think there should be a really wide-ranging approach that is take sentencing far more seriously. How many times do we hear about terrible crimes happening and that man has already been convicted, or there's already 1 million AVOs out? AVOs need to be enforced. There are a whole lot of different legal things that need to happen. There also needs to be less stigma for men to be able to talk about it and to be rehabilitated around this.
How can you say those two things at the same breath, though? You're saying men need to talk about it and there needs to be less stigma, but we also need to be much tougher. How can there be less stigma around something that we're trying to stamp out? I mean, isn't public shaming?
When I say stigma, what I mean is, think about what happened to White Ribbon, right? White Ribbon was an organisation that was about men talking about domestic violence. And for a very wide range of reasons, that organisation has been very discredited, right?
A lot of those men were charged with assaulting women or had histories of violence in their past against women.
I'm not arguing with you. My point is, we can't just go, all right, listening to men seems like we are siding with the perpetrator. We need to understand that men need to fix this problem. When I say men need to talk about it and call it out and bring it to the light all the time, because they're not, women are, because they're the ones who are going to fix this. And the way that our conversation has gone now is that if we ever talk about what the causes are, and let's face it, if the phone's ringing every 2 minutes, we're talking about a lot of men and there are a lot of different causes. We have to get to that root. So we have to get to the root, which is all the conversations and the calling it out and the dealing with sexism. And we have to deal with the actual response at the front line, which is lock these guys up, treat it really seriously, make sure that this is not okay in any social group and it's not something to be made jokes about and it's not something to be laughed off. All of that needs to happen. But it's men who need to do it, not women.
But the reason that they're not, if you look at anything that affects men, to paraphrase Annabelle Crabb, if 60 people had been taken by sharks, if 6 people had been taken by sharks this year, we would be draining the oceans. A couple of people died in incidents of coward punches, which used to be called being king hit. Not only did we turn that into an instant crime because the victims of it were men, But we even changed the vocabulary around it. It wasn't called a king hit anymore. Let's call it a coward punch. So in the same way that things that women are interested in aren't taken seriously, like pop culture or fashion or media, things where women are under threat, like domestic violence, are also not prioritised in our society.
The coward punch thing, I don't know what the comparison is. I don't know what we can do that is like that for domestic violence. Like, I get the term change, and I think that, you know, legally and the police need to take domestic violence more seriously, but I think it's a very different case. I do resent that we are Australia's biggest women's media company, and it's all over our homepage. But if I go and look at some media companies run by men, it's not.
Or any other media company that's not run by women.
And even like counting dead women.
This is my point.
Yeah, it's women counting dead women. It's not men.
When you're talking about like we're not acting because it doesn't affect men, it affects women. It does affect men. That's why I want them to own the issue and I want them to keep talking about it. I could name off the top of my head about 3 male domestic violence advocates.
You're talking about something different, Hole. It affects women as victims. So naturally, the victims in a situation are the ones that are going to be most invested in making change and creating awareness. The perpetrators and the potential perpetrators, what's in it for them?
But what about all the men who are sitting around complaining all the time? I'm getting tired with the toxic masculinity brush.
Yeah.
It's not cool to be a guy anymore. Oh my God, you can't even, like, what about all those guys? Why aren't those guys sticking up for the women in their lives who they love? Why aren't they standing with us shoulder to shoulder on this? Like, that is what infuriates me.
I completely agree.
I agree. I'm sick of these conversations ending, and I hear a lot of conversations ending with, well, we better do more. And I'm like, no, way too urgent. It's way more urgent than that.
But no one knows what to do.
But
it's like
some
how to
people
stop
do.
the men from killing the women.
A lot of experts
Some
in
people
the space
do.
do know what to do.
And so I just think that that's important to sort of end on that. So, for example, there was an incredible academic who has come out and said that the case study of something exciting that has worked actually took place in Argentina. 1 in 5 police stations in Argentina are run by women. So if you are someone who is a victim of intimate partner violence, then you go there. There are childcare facilities set up to look after your kids. There's counsellors, there's lawyers. And that, in one generation, has made an enormous difference. So that's an example of something. We need to look at that.
That no one's even talking about here.
Yeah, and it's like, even with funding, and I have close friends who work in this, and they just say the funding needs to be evidence-based. It needs to be victim-centred. And we also need to acknowledge really complex issue. It's not going to be something that's solved with a few conversations. It is a lot bigger than that.
And also it's changing all the time. We talk about this, why is it getting worse, in the same breath that we're talking about the fact that male sexual violence against women is changing because of pornography and because of technology and because, like, it's a constantly changing playing field and we need to keep up with that too.
Something that this is a good time to tell you about out louders is that Mamamia has decided this year to partner with an amazing charity called Rise Up. One of the big reasons, to your point, Jessie, around what are some more creative solutions, because it's so easy as a woman, and we all do, is feeling despairing. It's like, how can we have any impact on this number going up and up and up? Because we're not killing the women. We need the men to stop. So what can we do? One of the big reasons that a lot of women go back after trying to leave these relationships or don't leave them in the first place because they feel like it's too dangerous is that the emergency accommodation that's available to them, or the temporary accommodation, is so different and so much worse than where they've come from in terms of, bedrooms for their children and furniture and safety. And so what Rise Up does is that it works with all the domestic violence agencies that are looking to rehome women and children who are escaping domestic violence and make those homes really lovely and
somewhere you want to be.
Somewhere you want to be, and not filled with old furniture but with new things. And one of the things that we were doing is that we volunteered at Mamamia a few weeks ago and we went and prepared one of these houses. So you're building the furniture and you're building the little toys and setting up the nursery, and so that for the first time these women who have been through so much and children come and feel cared for and worthy and safe and protected. And Outlouders, you're going to hear more about this, but if you want to do something to help move the needle, you can pledge $2 a week to Rise Up. Just comes directly out of wherever it is. That will help them to prepare more of these houses and to support more women. They do this all around Australia. Please follow them on social media. It's Rise Up with a Z. At the end of this episode, we are going to play all the names of all the women who were read out by Susan Lee in Parliament this week.
Support's available for you if you are experiencing any form of violence and abuse. For phone counselling, you can call 1-800-RESPECT. That's 1-800-737-732.
And we'll put a link in the show notes to where you can pledge to support Rise Up.
If you want to make Out Loud part of your routine 5 days a week, we release segments on Tuesdays and Thursdays just for Mamma Mia subscribers. To get full access, follow the link in the show notes, and a big thank you to all our current subscribers.
It's time for Best and Worst of the Week. It's Friday. We're reflecting back on the week that was. I'm going to go first. My worst is the very good friend of mine who texted me this week and said, "Are you on HRT?" And I was like, "Yeah." "Why? Are you?" And she was like, "Oh my God, I've just heard an episode of The Imperfects. It was amazing. It was all about perimenopause.
My mum messaged me the same thing.
Maybe I should go on
Same
HRT."
thing.
And I was like, "Bitch, please." My estrogens levels are low. I've got no desire for your approval. I'm about to tear you a new one because I have been doing summits and making podcasts and talking about this. And yet you get your information about perimenopause by a podcast, albeit a very good podcast, that's hosted by 3 men.
But how incredible is that? Mia Freedman, Changemaker, you've created a wave. And I'm sure that they are bowing down. How brilliant is it that we have 3 men in Australia sitting there going, let's put this on?
I'm not dissing them. I'm dissing my friend. Has she not noticed me banging on about this for the last 4 years?
Yeah. It's hard being you because, and you've said it before, you're an early adopter. And so then it becomes mainstream and you're like, guys, I've been talking about photoshopping for a while now. So this is your new frontier.
I've had to delete her from my phone and our friendship's over, obviously. I'm just kidding. My best of the week has been that my daughter's been at schoolies and I have not been worried at all this week, not one time. Do you know why?
Because you've evolved?
God,
Because
no.
you're not helicoptering anymore?
I'm not helicoptering anymore. I haven't called her or texted her barely at all because I can see where she is at all times.
Oh, my gosh.
On the family tracking app.
So you're double helicoptering.
I literally can see, I was watching her at one point and she's been in Byron Bay and I can see like when she's in town, I can watch her cross the road. The little thing moves because you can live track. You can watch it in real time.
Oh my God. Are you like, honey,
And I
I've
could
seen where
see-
you've been eating and you need a vegetable.
It's a bit,
Creepy? Yeah.
creepy, but also good and bad because also I'm like, wait, that's not her accommodation. What time is it? Where is she?
Have you had to stop yourself from calling her in that situation? Or go, you've been in the pub for a really long time. How many drinks have you
I did call
had?
her and she didn't pick up, but she was in the middle of the bush. And I'm like, why are you in the middle of the bush? She was at a bush doof with like 2,000 other people in the middle of the bush dancing in the rain at midnight.
My God.
So it's both good and bad, but on balance, I'd say it's pretty good.
Holly, what's your worst?
God, that fills me with dread, the idea of tracking my daughter through school. I'd rather not know. Anyway, my worst was the other day I was in the office and I was talking to my young friend, Emily Vernon. You may know her. I used to host a podcast with her. And I was talking to her and then I looked down at myself and I realised that all the buttons on my shirt were open. And I was wearing a purple bra, like a nice Nala bra.
Yeah.
I love those bras. And it was on full display and I was basically showing Emily my boobs. And I was mortified and went, oh my God, Em, how didn't you tell me that my tits are out, basically? And I'm doing up my buttons. And she goes, oh, I thought that's a look you were going for.
Holly's having a weird moment.
So basically, Em thinks that my midlife crisis has evolved to a point where now I'm just walking around with my bra and expecting everybody to be down with it.
Well,
So
I wouldn't allow that.
my best was no filter this week, right? So I'm not going to bore out loud as with mine and Mia's long-standing argument about whether or not women should just put it away, like me just then with my bra out. No Filter this week's with Trinny Woodall, who I'm sure you all know who she is, and she's one of Mia's good mates. And when she came in to do that interview, it wasn't that long since Trinny had done a shoot for You magazine in the UK where she'd appeared naked on the cover. Couldn't see anything, but she was naked on a horse, recreating Beyonce. And Mia didn't like it. And the best thing that I have heard in ages, because we've had a few uncomfortable conversations about this, but I've never been naked on a horse, at least not to my knowledge, maybe at a bush stuff in Byron back in like 1997. I've never been naked on a horse, but Trinny has. And Mia tells Trinny that she felt betrayed, and Trinny said, in fact, I'm just going to play you a little grab.
The Emily Ratajkowskis. Women,
they're
innately
nervous
suspicious.
of women.
It feels like a betrayal because it's like, you conform to all the beauty standards and you're pandering to the male gaze, and that just makes it harder for the rest of us.
But I'm going to change your mindset because I think it's old-fashioned to think you're pandering to the male gaze, because I don't give a shit about the male gaze.
Yeah.
That was so irrelevant in it. It wasn't about being sexy. It was about, I'm here whether I'm in my birthday suit or covered in sequins. I love myself. I do. And not in a conceited way, Mia. But so when I read you've betrayed, I haven't fucking betrayed women. I've just felt, I will walk around in my bra and knickers on Instagram. All right.
But you are so skinny, and not saying skinny is a bad thing, but you conform to the beauty standards of a 23-year-old. Like
I know, but I've met people with body dysmorphia who are half the size of me. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's our internal feeling with the perception of how we see other bodies in women. All right. So definitely there is that. I have an acceptable body.
It kept going. If you want to listen to some more, we'll put a link in the show notes. Gosh, that was quite full on, wasn't it?
I was listening to it on a train. I was going home from the office on a train, and I was literally beaming and going, yes! I remember somebody said once the most radical thing a woman can do is love herself. I was like, yes, Trinny.
Oh, you were yesing Trinny, of course. You weren't yesing me.
No.
No, I was yesing you too, Mia, because the fact that conversation was had is what was great about it, right? Like, obviously, I'm more lean on Trinny's side in that discussion, but I love that you went there. I love that these two smart women were discussing it with grace and humour and a bit of passion. I thought it was great. Well done, both.
Imagine, Holly, if you were listening and Mia was like, oh my God, I loved you on that horse. We'd have been like, you fucking two-faced bitch.
That's exactly why it's so great, and you do deserve cred for it.
Thanks.
My worst this week is there are just some days where you go, I'm not coping with all this. It's like I feel as though
that's called Wednesday.
That's and Thursday and Friday and Saturday. Look, today is one of those days. I can't do my skirt up. It doesn't do up, but it's the only thing I had. I have droplets of milk on my shoe and all over my house. There are just droplets of it's my milk. Last night I was like, I've got to pump. And then I got on a plane and I was like,
because you went down to do the project. You came back.
Yep. So it's 9:30 and I'm sitting on a plane.
Busting?
And Can we get back to that intervention with Jessie about just say no to things, Jessie?
The pumping, I had to pump, right? And I'm on the tarmac. And they go, we're going to be sitting here for another 15 minutes. And I'm desperate. So I go, I'm going to the bathroom to pump. Yep. And I stand up and the flight attendant goes, everyone has to be in your seats with your seatbelts on. And I was like, I'm about to fucking explode. I'm sitting next to a man in a suit.
This is a lactation emergency, man.
And I was like, when you're so angry you feel like crying.
Who are you angry at?
I was angry at the world because I went, the pressure on women to breastfeed, and then you create a world where it's impossible. So what I did, man sitting there, and I went, fuck it. And I got my pump out next to my man in the business suit, and I just pumped. And I could tell that he was looking at me going, it's 9:30, I've had a big day. And now this woman is dripping milk, because I can never do it without dripping milk all over me, all over the seat, all over everywhere.
This is the best story of all time.
And I was
you used to be so shy.
Yeah. I was like, I can't. And it's really loud. It's always really loud. So he was looking at it like, someone got a vibrator out? And I was like, it's worse. It's so much worse than a vibrator. Just sitting there going, you make it bloody hard. And so anyway, that's my week this week. My best is on Sunday, I filled in for the project and I was sitting beside Hamish. And I know that over the last few weeks, we've been talking a lot about journalists and that letter that went around and the coverage of really complicated issues. I've felt this at Mamma Mia for years and years of just sitting next to people in their element and watching a masterclass at going, this is what you're an expert in. Watching Hamish interview someone, it was an Israeli spokesperson, watching how his brain worked, and he's been doing this for a lot of years, and he's one of the best in the country, if not the world.
And he's reported from war zones.
And just has context none of us have. It was such an honour to kind of sit there quietly and just go, oh, wow. We can feel despairing about the state of media, but there are, and I'll shout out particularly ABC journalists, because I think Patricia Kavelis on ABCRN is doing a brilliant job as well, who are being objective and are doing an incredible job at reporting and challenging people on both sides. I just feel like I learnt a lot about how you do that and how you get to the truth. And I'm not a journalist. That's not my background. That's not my training. So to see someone like that was just like, this is remarkable. So
I think he's great.
Yeah. I think if you are feeling despairing, I would just, the ABC is just doing fantastic coverage on this, and Hamish is always someone to watch.
I've got a recommendation that's literally superficial, very much, because it goes on your face. It is a product called Golden Glow. It's by an Australian lady startup called Airy Day, AIRY Day, and it's called Golden Glow SPF 50. Obviously an SPF, but it's got other stuff in it as well, like vitamins and things. But
does it have any tint?
Yes. That's
okay,
the point.
that's
That's
what
the
I
Golden
need.
Glow. That's the Golden Glow.
What I need.
So now we're busy ladies, multitasking, flying, sitting on tarmac, whatever. You don't necessarily always have time for your SPF and then maybe a foundation or a tinted moisturiser. Gives you that. It wouldn't be enough coverage for to be on its own, but I use a fairly light foundation. I use like a foundation serum. So I use it every day on my face. And another recommendation, they have another one called Clear as Day, and I use that on my neck and chest because it is literally clear. And if you anything like me, you've got stains on all your do you have stains on all your clothes? Yeah. So
from the sunscreen.
Yeah, from sunscreen. But here's one more tip that isn't going to cost you anything, particularly if you have hairspray around. On a white shirt or a shirt, when you're going to wear foundation, any shirt really, spray it with hairspray.
No.
Before you put it on. Let it dry and put it on. I've been doing this with all of my T-shirts because Trini wears a lot of white and I never know how.
No, I can't wear white. I've stopped buying white, which I think white looks lovely on me. I love white. But I can't wear it because I get foundation on it.
So what I've started to do is firstly, I try to use this sunscreen, but also I spray my tops and my shirts particularly because, anything with a collar.
Yeah.
I spray it with hairspray.
That is a game
That's
changer.
the smartest thing you've ever said.
Well, then let's make that my recommendation.
I'm actually blown away. You are so smart, Mia.
It's a trick, my reco today. Well done, me.
If you're looking for something else to listen to, on yesterday's subscriber episode, we talked about all the things that you actually get better at doing with age. So it was about how there are certain things that until your 40s, you're actually not going to peak. Your peak continues as you get older and older. So we talk about the age where you're the happiest, the age where you're going to be the best at ultra marathons, which wasn't particularly relevant to me but could be to others, when your brain works the best. And it was fascinating. We learnt so much. A link to that episode will be in the show notes.
Thank you, as always, for listening to us on Australia's #1 news and pop culture show. We love you. This episode was produced by Emeline Gazilas. The assistant producer is Tali Blackman, with audio production by Leah Porges. And as we said in the segment earlier on, we want to end this episode by playing the full list of names that Susan Lee read out in Parliament this week of the women we've lost this year to violence. It is a number that we have to stare in the face and tackle.
Lindy, Kimmy, Lucina, Dana Isaac, Maria Williams, Wendy Sleeman, Rebecca Cluer, a 37-year-old unnamed woman in the Northern Territory, Anastasia Slater, Crystal Monks, Tricia Lambourne, Janet Guthrie, Margaret Mars Smetheram, Jacqueline Jackie Lee Purton, Hannah Pringle, Lisa Fennick, Erin Malavey, Elaine Naroldal, Emmerich Lasaka, Kerry Bodney, Lynn Wright, Heather Ball, Tatiana Tanya Dohotara, Monique Lazak, a 34-year-old unnamed woman in Western Australia, Maria Ivanovic, Christy Armstrong, Amira Munyi, Kumanji Skeen, Christine Formosa Rakic, a 47-year-old unnamed woman from the Northern Territory. An unnamed woman in her 30s from Western Australia. Alexandra Vagulis, Gypsy Satterley, Jessica Townley, Linda Kerr, Georgia Lyle, Joan Hobbs, Jean Morley, a 40-year-old unnamed woman from Victoria, Tiffany Woodley, Marie Vermont, 11-week-old Murphy Margaret Cox and her mother Taylor, Drew Douglas, Liz Muliaga, an 87-year-old unnamed woman from Victoria, Catherine Safranco, Rebecca Collard, Heather Dean, Yu Grace Zhu, Crystal Marshall, Titui Huong Nguyen, Lily James, Logie Osasis, Alice Rose McSherra, Deirdre D. Fulp, a 44-year-old unnamed woman from South Australia, 45-year-old unnamed woman from South Australia, Julianne Egan, a 39-year-old unnamed woman from South Australia, Jodie Jewell, Katchuzi Makato.